Thanks. Pleasure to be here. As Lauren said, I'm Alastair in the FIH. I'm the Facilities and Equipment Manager. I've been with the FIH about 18 months now. It's a part-time role. My background is I spent 30 years testing sports surfaces, working with a number of sports governing bodies, including the FIH, FIFA, World Rugby, etc. So focusing very much on the quality of the fields, the standards for the fields, the construction, etc. I just wanted to run through today what we've been doing in the last 18 months to bring you up to date and hopefully see how that can help you with your facility strategies in New South Wales. The Hockey Revolution is the 10-year strategy for hockey that the FIH launched in 2014. This was developed as a direct result of following the most successful Olympics ever in London from a hockey perspective in terms of the media attention, participation, spectators at the venue. Hockey found itself on the ballot paper, should it remain an Olympic sport? The IOC had decided that they were not going to continually grow the games, adding more and more sports in. So if somebody wanted to come in, somebody had to go out. And they had a number of applications from golf, rugby sevens, squash, a couple of other sports wanting to come in. And how hockey had the misfortune to be selected to go up against them, I don't know. But it was quite a rude awakening to the FIH. Thankfully, hockey got enough votes from the IOC to remain an Olympic sport, so we're there. We're obviously in Rio this year, we're in Tokyo in 2020. Who knows, 2024, nobody knows. There could be another ballot. Hockey may or may not be selected for reselection. So we had to address some of the issues that were presented to us to improve the game, to grow the game globally. One of the problems we do have is hockey. We have 132, I think it is, national associations affiliated to the FIH. There's 220 members of the IOC. So clearly there's 70, 80 countries in the world who have no attachment to hockey, no involvement with hockey. So we start off at -80 in the ballot effectively. So we have to try and address that by growing the game, getting more countries showing an interest in participating in hockey. So the Hockey Revolution is the strategy that has been developed and has been launched, and part of that focuses very much on facilities. So some of the key statements coming out of the strategy, our objective is to raise the global status and popularity of the game of hockey. Just a few figures to try and put it into context of where we are and where we need to go to. Hockey's played in about 100 countries. I said there's 130 members, but it's played in about 100 countries. We think by about 3 million people globally. There's somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 hockey fields around the world, or multi-sport fields on which hockey is played. We get about 100 new fields a year being certified to the FIH standards, so we wanted to try and build on that to set a quality threshold to encourage people to take up the game. There's about 20 key manufacturers producing hockey turf products globally. We wanted to work with those companies who have the same philosophy, the same aspirations of the FIH. We wanted to give them recognition and to promote them to ensure that people building hockey facilities went to the right companies, the right suppliers. And there's about 275 products that we have been tested and shown to meet our current standards. So there's quite a diverse range of products and manufacturers. Just some good headline figures. This is the sort of things we like to present. It's good media. As you're probably all very familiar, hockey is one of the few team sports where our participation is almost exactly 50-50, male-female. So that's very important. Over 200 million people watched the Olympics or the FIH World Cup in 2014, so the media attention is growing. That's a key area of growth for us. More media, more coverage, more people look at the game, hopefully more people start playing the game, more media, more investment, more marketing, more advertising, more money to invest in the game as well. We were the third biggest spectator sport in London. Whether Rio will be the same is going to be interesting. I suspect probably not. There's a number of challenges out there, and Brazil is not a hockey-playing nation, so you haven't got a local audience necessarily to the same degree as we had in London or obviously in Sydney in 2000. The number of youth players picking up the game is actually increasing, and also the number of masters or veterans players is increasing. The youth figures are very positive. We are one of the few team sports where actually youth participation is increasing, so that's a really good statistic for us. We claim we're a top 10 sport globally. Social media, which is one of the things that we're now all judged by. We are the fastest growing international federation in terms of people following us on Twitter, Facebook, etc., etc. So we seem to be ticking a lot of the important boxes in terms of getting the message over about what hockey is going, where hockey is going, and what we're trying to achieve. Part of the strategy is we have a number of goals that we've prioritised to meet our objectives over the next 8-9 years. One of those is to be a high-performing sport, and to do that we need good quality facilities, which is where the quality programme, which I'll talk about later, comes into our thinking. As an international federation, we recognised that we had to become more professional in the way that we provide guidance and governance to the sport, and we needed to build a powerful brand and image for the game of hockey that we could then promote globally to get the investment and the participation. So those were the key objectives of the strategy. There are many facets of the strategy. There's some hard copies there of a summary document. If anyone has interest, it's all on our website as well, FIH.ch. It's what we're trying to achieve, as I say, over the next 10 years. But moving forward onto facilities and fields, which is the reason I'm here, that's my background. We are talking about hockey turf. We want to get the message over that this year is the 40th anniversary of the Olympic Games being played on synthetic turf hockey fields. Montreal 76 was the first time hockey used synthetic turf. Obviously, it's now the surface that everybody desires and strives to play on. So from our perspective, it's not an artificial surface. It's not a simulation of something else. It is the surface that hockey wants to play on. It's a surface that's engineered specifically for our game. That has some challenges. We're not like football or rugby, who are trying to replicate good quality natural turf fields. So you build a football field, you can play football on it, you can play rugby on it, you can play rugby league on it, you can play AFL on it. We struggle a little bit because hockey is slightly, well, it's very different in terms of the technology and the product. That means our ability to multi-sport and share facilities is more challenging, more limited, and that in itself creates some issues for us in terms of funding and strategies. But back in 1986, 10 years after Montreal, the FIH recognised the advantages that synthetic turf gave the game. The sport was being played, it was faster, technically more demanding, but more exciting, more stimulating. The media, the spectators liked the new version of the game. So the FIH recognised this was the way that they wanted to take the sport. This is the way for the sport to develop and to grow. They also recognised, and hockey was the first sports federation to recognise the need to set standards to control the way the pitches performed. They wanted hockey, with due respect to Paul and his colleagues and his predecessors, they wanted hockey to be setting the agenda, not the synthetic turf industry telling us what we were going to play on. We were going to tell the industry what we wanted, and then they would innovate and develop the products. So back in 1986, the FIH set some standards defining the quality, the playing characteristics, the safety characteristics of synthetic turf fields. And over the years, those standards have evolved slowly. But we recognised, or the FIH recognised, probably 2013, 2014, that there was really a need for a total revamping and updating of the standards. I was brought in to do that for them. That was my background. Let's say I joined them 18 months ago. And the end result of that is what we're now calling the quality program for hockey turf. So this is our strategy and our program for trying to provide a quality assurance process for those people investing in hockey. Doesn't matter if it's elite hockey at the Olympic level or community hockey at grassroots level. We want this program and this concept to be available and adopted, hopefully globally, to give people who are investing in hockey fields the confidence that they're going to get a good, durable, well-performing surface that will last the test of time. So a new hockey field, and I'm sure you're all aware of this, is a major capital investment. Typically, I would guess $1 million+ for a new facility if you're starting from scratch. It's a lot of money. Doesn't matter if it's Australian dollars or British pound or US dollars, euros, whatever it might be. Wherever you are in the world, a hockey field is a lot of money. It's going to get used on average, we think, about 1,500 hours a year. So it's going to get quite extensive usage. And you all expect that field to last 8 to 10 years or even longer. So there's a demand for high quality, well-performing surfaces. Generally speaking, the fields get under-maintained. Most people think it's maintenance-free. The industry, or many parts of the industry, I should be fair, have spent the last 15, 20 years telling everybody it's an all-weather surface that doesn't require maintenance. Put it in and forget about it. It will last forever. You know, job done. If only life was so simple. It really isn't the case. There's also a justifiable expectation that if things are built properly, the base and the shot pad, you should be able, in 10 to 12 years' time, take the carpet off and just put a new carpet straight down on top of the existing base, the existing shot pad. So a lot of your initial capital investment should last you 20+ years. And we want to ensure that is the case, that people are getting the return that they should justifiably expect. The field, from a playing point of view, it's obviously got to have the right playing characteristics. Everybody knows what they want from a hockey field. We need to ensure the surfaces deliver that they have the right safety characteristics for the players, so that there are no risks of injury, the right levels of grip, the right levels of shock absorption. We want to ensure that the way the ball interacts with the surface, again, is what the game desires. The game is generally getting faster and faster. The surface in Rio, which Paul will talk about a bit later, has been designed to be specifically designed to be faster than the surface was in London. You know, the technology is allowing us to improve the surfaces to take it further and further forward. Whether that's good for the game, that's an internal discussion that's just starting within the FIH. As the game gets faster, it's great for the elite players, but is the average club player able to adapt to that surface and play safely? That's a discussion that we're just starting. You know, the player safety following the tragic fatality with the cricketer a couple of years ago, the issues with concussion in America, we have to look at it. We have a little hard ball flying around at 80, 90 miles an hour. Players have got no safety helmets, no protection. Is it really in the good interest of the game for the surfaces to be getting faster and faster and faster? We don't know. It's a discussion that we're undertaking at the moment. But we need to be certain that the fields are as safe as possible. They obviously need to be durable. It's a lot of money. You want it to last at 8 to 10 years. You've got a pretty harsh climate here. UV from the sun. The polymers that are used to make the carpets, they don't really like sunlight. They will degrade. We need to ensure that the rate of degradation is not excessively quickly, so that the fields will last the 10+ years. A lot of challenges, a lot of engineering to consider. So what we're trying to do is ensure quality. It's a fundamental requirement of the program. We're trying to give you the confidence to invest in the right products with the right suppliers, with the right installers. So how do we go about this? We're doing it in 3 parts, and I'll go through each stage separately and try and explain the reasoning and the logic behind it. So we're looking at the playing surface, the hockey turf initially. This is the surface that's designed specifically for the game of hockey. I do emphasise that because Many people think they can play on a range of surfaces which are not necessarily designed and manufactured for the game. We've identified 3 general categories of surfacing, and we've got them, to go for each one. Each has a different designation. So at the top end, if that's the right way of putting it, we have our global category. These at the moment are non-filled wet fields. A short, dense piled carpet on a shot pad has to be watered to provide the right playing characteristics. This is the surface that you'll be very familiar with, what you're playing on in many of your facilities. It's what we require for top-level national and international hockey. It's the surface that everybody historically has desired and strived to have. Even in parts of the world where they haven't got water, they still want a wet hockey field. It's quite a challenge at times, but it is what the elite level of the game are playing on, and everybody has aspirations to be providing those facilities. Realistically, though, in many parts of the world, in many markets, they either can't afford or they don't need that elite performing surface. So our second category is designated the national category. These are still surfaces designed primarily for hockey, but they have a sand dressing or a sand infill. Typically between about 50 and 70% of the pile has a sand dressing, so the top of the carpet is still just the fibre from the yarn, but the weight of the carpet's giving some stability, some durability to the system. The big advantage of these is they can be used dry or wet. You don't have to have an irrigation system. So environmentally, it's a good message. They're more sustainable. As I say, certain parts of the world, they just haven't got the water to put on the fields. Other parts of the world, the UK is a good example. Water's not a problem for us. We have too much of the bloody stuff, but it is a challenge in terms of the drainage. We have to pay a lot of money for our water to put it on the field. To take it away, you have to pay for the irrigation system. So these types of surfaces allow us to put in systems that are more economic, more user-friendly from that perspective. Still got a good hockey performance. Certainly in many of the more mature hockey playing countries, these would be considered suitable for national play, regional and community hockey. So they've certainly got a significant role in the marketplace. The third category is our multi-sport category, and we can split this really into 2 types. The third generation surfaces, these are the long pile systems filled with a combination of sand and rubber, which are designed primarily for football. FIFA have set very demanding standards for football surfaces. They have the same approach as the FIH. Football is trying to replicate a good quality natural turf field. Hockey decided 40 years ago, 30 years ago, it didn't want to play on a good quality natural turf field anymore. It wanted to play on a synthetic turf field. So we've moved away from the surfacing that FIFA and Rugby are trying to replicate with the synthetic turf field. But we do recognise in certain parts of the world, even from a hockey perspective, poor third generation surface is 100% better than playing on dirt or a rutted natural turf field. So in certain parts of the world, we are happy to see hockey being played on third generation football surfaces. In the more mature hockey playing nations, probably you wouldn't enjoy playing on it. You'd think it too slow, too inconsistent. But there is a role for these surfaces. We also have a range of sand-filled surfaces. Shorter pile carpet, typically 20 to 25 millimetres, maybe 30 millimetres in length, filled or partly filled with sand, which can be used for other sports. In the UK, England Hockey are talking to England Netball, for example, to see if they can share facilities. You can play lacrosse on them, you can possibly play tennis on them, you can play futsal, you can play five-a-side football. So these are surfaces that are more sympathetic to what hockey wants, but like any multi-sport surface, it's a compromise. As soon as you put 2 sports together, you're compromising the performance of all of the sports, all of the partners. But there are a range of multi-sport surfaces out there that are available and can be used for hockey to a certain degree. Good for community and grassroots development of the game. So we take all the products and we have set standards for the quality for each of the 3 categories. So for each category, we look at the way the ball rolls on the surface, we look at the way the ball bounces on the surface, we look at the consistency of the surface, we look at the shock absorption, the impact absorption of the surface to make sure that it's going to provide the protection the players need. We look at the level of grip it provides. We don't want a surface that's providing so much grip that when you run and stop or turn, you twist your ankle, you turn, your ankle doesn't move, you've got a foot grip, you've got a problem with your Achilles. Equally, we don't want the surfaces to be slippery. We want players to be able to run and turn and stop with confidence. So we simulate the interaction of the player on the surface, the ball on the surface. We measure that mechanically in the laboratory, and we've established what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. We look at the durability of the surfaces. We look at their resistance to wear, their resistance to abrasion, the strength of the yarn, the strength of the carpet, the strength of the shot pad. We put them into cabinets to simulate the effects of weathering and aging. We take them out and then we pull them to pieces again to make sure that they are going to last the 8 to 10 years plus that everybody's expecting. And then finally, we take all the components that make up the system, the carpet, the infill, if there's an infill, the shock absorbing layer underneath, and we fully identify them so we know exactly what every component is, so that when the system is supplied to your field and the field is tested and checked, part of the process, and I'll go into more detail in a couple of minutes, but part of the process is to verify that you have got on your field exactly the same materials that have been tested in the laboratory. They haven't made a mistake and substituted yarn A for yarn B, or used a different infill, or the shock pad that should be 20 millimeters thick, it only happens to be 15 millimeters thick, or whatever it might be. It's a quality assurance process to make sure that you get the product that we know has been tested and works and will deliver the performance you're looking for. So the products are tested. There's a comprehensive test report which is produced. That's supplied to the manufacturer. So if Polytan, as an example, have had their product tested, this happens to be the Olympic product, I think, or yes, it is the Olympic product. That details all the results of all the testing. So that's supplied to Polytan as the manufacturer. They can then use that to support their sales effort, and they also get a certificate from the FIH confirming it meets the requirements, and it goes onto our website so you can double check that everything is as it should be. So that gives you the hockey turf system, the carpet, the shot pad, as I say, the infill if there was an infill there. But that's only half the process. You can have the best hockey turf in the world. If it is installed badly or installed on a bad base, you end up with a bad hockey field. So we need to ensure that the installation quality and the construction quality is as good as the product that's going on the top of it. So as I say, the best quality hockey turf, badly installed, it's a bad field. I'm sure you've all probably had experiences of fields that are less than perfect because there's been an installation problem. Something has gone wrong, or somebody's cut a corner, or whatever it might be. We're trying to minimize, again, those risks. So when the field has been built, we have a series of tests. We come out and we test the quality of the field. So we measure all the properties, the ball properties, the shock absorption, the foot grip, etc. All these properties are measured on a number of places across the field to make sure that everywhere on the field is complying with the requirements, with the specifications, and to ensure that there is consistency across the field. So we don't want the field to be at the hard end of the scale over there and the soft end of the scale over here. Everything has to be uniform, so you have a true, consistent, well-performing hockey field at whichever category of performance you've selected. We also look at the profile of the field, the gradients of the field. If the field is built with gradients that exceed our recommendations, it's likely to result in a ball roll. The speed of the surface will be inconsistent. If you're going up the slope, it's going to be slower than going down the slope, obviously. So that's why we have criteria for slope and for gradients, which I have to say, many fields in Australia historically haven't followed the FIH guidelines. Not for me to say why, but it does mean that many of your fields struggle to actually meet our requirements, which are based on what the players are saying globally they desire. So if you are building new fields, I would encourage you to ensure that your designers, your consultants, your engineers, your professionals do follow the recommendations in our manuals. They're there for good reason. Lots of experience globally. It's not what's done in Europe is perceived to be better than what's done in Australia, or what's done in the US is better than done in Europe. It's a collective view of what the game desires. We make sure that the field is, the planarity, the smoothness of the field is consistent. We don't want ridges, we don't want undulations, depressions, etc. We check the accuracy of the line markings. You'd be surprised how many fields the line markings don't actually meet the rules of the game. But we're trying to, by checking it, the good installers are getting that right now. But you would be surprised how many reports we get. And when I was testing the fields, how many times you get on the phone, hey guys, come back and remark the field, you've got the penalty spot in the wrong place. Very common occurrence. If it's a wet field, we check the irrigation, because we know you've got to have an even distribution of water on the field to give the optimum playing characteristics. So again, you can have the best field, the best construction. If you've got a poor irrigation system, it's a bad playing surface. So we check the irrigation, and as I mentioned earlier, we then take samples of the carpet, samples of the shot pad, samples of the infill, if there is infill, from the site back to the laboratory to verify that what you've got on your field is what was approved previously, to stop any mistakes being made. So as I mentioned earlier, if you are designing a hockey field, please ensure that the slope is not excessive, not beyond the recommendations that we have in our guidelines. As the surfaces become faster, they become more sensitive to the slope. So we're finding that fields that are being resurfaced, which have previously passed, are now failing because the carpet technology is advancing. So converting or upgrading an existing facility may not be as straightforward as people previously were hoping. An excessive slope, as I say, basically inconsistent speed of the surface, the ball doesn't roll on a true line. And another problem we're finding is the water flows to the edges, so the middle's dry, the edges are wet, then you get inconsistency in the foot grip and the speed of the surface. The players will complain, particularly the elite players. So please follow the recommendations when possible. If everything's tested, again, you get a comprehensive test report of all the results, all the data, so you know exactly how your field is performing. So you've got a benchmark on day one. We know what the field was doing. You can then monitor that through the life of the surface. If things start to deteriorate, if the surface is becoming too hard or too slippy, for example, you can say to the supplier, on day one we know it's okay. 3 years later, it's become slippy. We've maintained it properly, we've used it properly. That is a defect. Therefore, we believe that's a justifiable claim on the warranty. So it gives you a benchmark on day one. You get a certificate for the field, put up on the clubhouse wall, naming the product, your site, etc., the manufacturer, and again it will appear on the FIH website as a certified field, which people can refer to for competition use, etc. We actually have 4 categories of field, so one more than the products, but following the same concept, we certify fields for multi-sport applications, for the national category, for the global category, and then we have a new category that we will be introducing for 2017, which is global elite. This is what the FIH requires for its top level events. So we want maximum size runoffs, for example. We want the dashed marks around the shooting circles. We don't want other markings on the field. So these are the requirements for the FIH for venues that aspire to host an FIH tournament at the higher level. It's not going to be a large number of fields around the world, but it makes it easier for us to say that's what we want. If you're designing a facility in Australia, in India, in the UK, that's what you need to do if you want to host an FIH event at some point in the future. Hockey Fives. I'm not sure to what degree Hockey Fives has hit the Australian market yet. Not a lot by the expression over there. Hockey Fives is a new version of hockey that the FIH are rolling out. As I explained at the beginning, we have to grow the game globally. A hockey field is a lot of money. Team sports generally are struggling to attract young people. They haven't got the time, the commitment to go and train 2 or 3 times a week and then go and play at a weekend. They want a more casual, less structured form of sport, be it football, be it rugby, and hopefully hockey. So this is our version of 5-a-side football or rugby sevens. This is 5-a-side hockey on a smaller facility. This is a model that we will be launching, rolling it out in 2016, 2017. We'll be promoting it from an international level, and then hopefully the national associations, the state associations in Australia and globally will be picking it up to encourage more people in Australia to play hockey, but equally important to us to take the game into Africa, into Asia, into South America, where, you know, what is hockey? It doesn't exist, to try and stimulate interest. Because we want these facilities to meet the objectives of quality and performance and sustainability, we will include Hockey Fives courts. We're calling them courts, not fields, to give a distinction. We will include these within the quality program. So if you decide to have one of these in a couple of years' time, maybe as a venue for your juniors to use, you can have it built to the same standards, the same process, the same quality assurance checks and certification. So that's what we're doing with the products and the fields, but equally important are the companies who we're working with to deliver all of this to the marketplace. We can't do it without the support of the manufacturers and the installers. And we have 4 categories of company that we're working with, and I'll go through each of those now. So we have certified manufacturers, field builders, preferred suppliers, and the test institutes who are a key part of the program for us. So we'll start with the manufacturers. These are companies who have a proven ability to produce good quality hockey surfaces that meet the FIH standards. They have to have products that have been tested and verified that meet the standard before they can join the scheme. They have to have been doing this for at least 3 years. We don't want companies coming and disappearing. So we're looking for a 3-year commitment before they can even, join the program. They have to have a quality program. We want them to be certified to something like ISO 9001, an international quality management system. So they will have checks in place that if something goes wrong during their production, they should identify it before the carpet gets out of the factory delivered to the site. We want to make sure they comply with the UN Convention of Labour Laws and Rights of the Child. We don't want factories using child labour basically in parts of Asia and other parts of the world where labour regulations may not be quite so stringently enforced as they are in Australia and in Europe and North America. Fundamentally, they have to provide comprehensive details of what maintenance their surface requires, and we look at that in quite a lot of detail to make sure that the advice they're giving for their product is appropriate to ensure that you, when you buy their products, know what the maintenance commitments are and what you need to be doing. We currently have 12 certified manufacturers based in Europe, Asia, South America, Australia, USA, and New Zealand. Secondly, and this is a new category that we've only just introduced, as I mentioned earlier, if the field is not built and constructed properly, you end up with a bad facility. So we want to give recognition to those companies that have a proven ability to build good quality hockey fields. So these are companies, again, who have at least 3 years' experience of building hockey fields, have to have in-house civil engineering expertise. Yeah. 50% of a hockey field is civil engineering. It's nothing to do with carpet technology or hockey turf technology. It's just basic civil engineering construction. So we want these companies to have that expertise in-house so they know what they're doing. They can design the field, build the field correctly. Again, they have to have a quality program, quality management program. They have to have suitable insurances to make sure that they've got the right protection in place. Increasingly, a lot of the market is resurfacing existing facilities. Synthetic turf disposal is an environmental problem that the industry is facing globally. I can take you to mountains of used synthetic turf fields in the Netherlands, in the UK, in Germany. In Europe, we're not allowed to put them into landfill anymore. We haven't got, at the moment, it's a very difficult thing to recycle because you've got a mixture of different materials. You've got different polymers, you've got potential contamination from sand infill, rubber infill. It's not an easy thing to recycle. And you've got 6,000 square meters of carpet on every hockey field. What do you do with it? So we want the companies who we are working with to have an environmentally sustainable policy for the disposal of synthetic turf. That will differ country to country, region to region, but we want to try and be encouraging and challenging the industry to address this issue because it is a big problem for the synthetic turf industry globally. And again, because in many cases you don't buy your hockey field from Polytan, for example, you buy it from the distributor who's representing Polytan in the marketplace. So we need to ensure that those companies are going to give you the maintenance advice that Polytan have developed for their product. So I say this is a new category. At the moment we have contractors signed up from Europe. We're delighted to have the first application in from an Australian company, so acknowledge Alan over there, Alan Berry Sports Services, who are going through the process and hopefully will meet the criteria quite soon. We're hoping that Alan will be the setting the example to his Australian colleagues and all the others will follow, well, a number of the better ones will follow soon. What it means in the UK, for example, we now have a number in the UK that you can specify in your tender document you have to be an FIH certified field builder to qualify to build the field. It's a requirement of the tender. So you're keeping out the general contractors who think they can build hockey fields but have no proven ability. So you can be more selective in how you specify. We also have 7 companies who are global players in the marketplace who manufacture and build, so they meet all of our criteria as certified manufacturers and all of our criteria of field builders. So at the moment, you have no certified field builders in Australia. Hopefully soon we'll have at least one, but you do have access to preferred suppliers, this is the term we've come up with, who meet exactly the same criteria. So some of these companies you may not be familiar with, but there are 7 companies who work globally. Tenkata is the parent company of Tiger Turf, who I know are active in the Australian market. Polytan, obviously Paul is here, Polytan is a global company. Edelgras is a Dutch company. I don't think they operate in the Australian market. Lano is a Belgian company. They definitely don't operate in the Australian market. AstroTurf might, they pulled out, okay. They were the first, but they sort of come and go, but they're still active in North America and in Europe. Field Turf definitely do operate in the Australian market. They're downstairs, so I know that for confidence. ACT Global is a US European company who I think are trying to get into the Australian market. In addition to those 7, Polytan are the FIH global supplier, which is a slightly separate category, but that means that Polytan have been selected. They've gone through a tendering process from the preferred suppliers, and they have been selected to supply the surfaces for the Olympics in 2020 in Tokyo and for the FIH World Cups in 2018 and 2022. So Polytan have additional status within the FIH family of companies. But any of those 7, from our perspective globally, we're quite happy if you went with one of those. you should get a good hockey field at the end of the process. The test institutes, they are a key component of what we're doing. We are 100% reliant on the data they tell us. If they tell us it's a good product, we accept it. If they tell us it's a good field, we accept it. Equally, if they tell us it's a bad field, we accept it. Maybe not always the manufacturers and installers accept it, but we are 100% reliant on the information coming from the test institutes. They have to be fully independent of the manufacturers of the installers, so there's no question about their integrity. ISO 17025 is the quality management system, the international standard for test laboratories. I spent 35 years working for these guys. That standard is a real pain in the backside. It's really, really demanding. So to get that accreditation, it really means they are the best of the best. But we're not happy with that. We then take them all, we drag them from all over the world to one hockey field, and we make them all test the same field at the same time under the same conditions, and we compare all the results to make sure that it doesn't matter if the laboratories come from the UK or from Australia or from Thailand or from Canada, wherever it might be, those guys are going to give you the same results, so that if we get a report, we can be confident it's correct. Two of the companies have Australian engineers, so there are two test labs, one based here in Sydney, a company called Acoustascan. That is an Australian company. They are accredited by the FIH for product and field testing. And then Labosport, which is a French company, they have engineers around the world, and they have an engineer based up in Brisbane. So there's competition in the field testing market. That was my last legacy to the testing world before I left. I used to work for Labosport. I was the international development manager. I entered the Australian market, and the prices halved in about 12 months. So that was my legacy to, to the testing world. But there are two credible test labs working in Australia. So what does this mean to all of you guys, the field owners, the players, and the competition organisers? We want you to be buying into this program because we think it makes sense. It's going to give you protection. We want to convince you that this is what you want to be doing when you look to have your field built. What does it bring you? It brings you certainty that the field has the right characteristics. It will perform as you require. The ball interaction will be as you expect. It will ensure that you have player welfare. Accidents happen. Players have injuries. But every injury these days is somebody's fault. The lawyer is soon behind. It's a litigious world. It's a compensation claimed focus in many, many occasions these days. The first thing the lawyers will ask is there a standard for a hockey field? Yes, there is. The FIH have one. Has the field been built to those standards? Possibly. Has the field been certified to those standards? If you can say yes, you've done all that can be reasonably expected of you to minimise your liability. If you've built a hockey field and it hasn't been certified, hasn't been checked, hasn't been tested, you're taking a risk. You're assuming it's okay. That's increasing your liability. Some insurance companies are now starting to say, actually, we won't insure you unless your hockey field has been certified to the FIH standards. We're certainly seeing that in some of the European countries. The approach we're taking is very similar to what FIFA have done for football and what World Rugby are doing for Rugby Union. Rugby Union has taken it one stage further and actually written it into the laws of the game that you have to play on a certified field, and the insurance companies in rugby are now saying if it's not certified, you're not insured. We're not there with hockey, we don't want to go there, but that's the way the industry, the insurance industry, is starting to look at things. It's minimising their risk. If they know they've got a good field, there's a less likelihood of the field being a contributing factor to what in many cases is a sporting accident. So it's demonstrating that compliance. It's defining the construction qualities so you know what to expect so that it can be checked, so your project manager can go out and make the right checks during construction. It's basically reducing the risk to everybody investing in the hockey field. It's trying to minimise that exposure and that risk. Because ultimately, we believe that if we get better hockey fields around the world, there will be more participation, more people wanting to play the game, we will retain more players. So it's in everyone's interest to try and promote high quality hockey facilities. How does this work in practice? It's a relatively simple process. You'll probably have a consultant or an engineer or an architect working for you as a professional advisor. The specification they should produce should basically be saying the field has to be surfaced with an FIH approved product, and on completion the field has to be tested and certified to demonstrate you got what you want. You then invite the FIH preferred suppliers, and when they're available, certified field builders to bid to do the construction of the field. Obviously, you do your normal tender review, your tender assessment, look at all the criteria, all the financial analysis. The field is built, you do all the checks during construction as you would normally do with a civil engineer, checking the drainage, the sub-base, etc., etc. And then on completion, the FIH test lab comes in, tests the field, and if everything is okay, you get the test certificate to confirm you've got what you asked for. It's not that complicated, or we hope it's not that complicated. We hope it's a fairly logical, straightforward process. What will it cost? That's the question. I can see that it's all going through everybody's mind, and it's a very valid question. There's no charge from the FIH at all. The only fee that you pay is what the test lab charges. I hope I'm right in this, Paul, now that typically in Australia, $5,000 seems to be the sort of figure that you're now getting. It used to be 10, certainly. Obviously, it will depend to a degree where you are. You've got test labs in Sydney, as I say, Sydney and Brisbane. If you're in Perth, they're going to pay a bit more because you've got to get the guys and the equipment over to Perth. But New South Wales, you should get good competitive prices. If you can get the testing, if you do 2 or 3 fields together, a couple of clubs do it at the same time, maybe something that the association can consider. Again, you pull them together, it's more competitive, it's more competition. If you get a whole number of fields, some of the international based institutes will come in as well. They have engineers in Asia, so you can get good competitive prices. End of the day, you're spending $1 million on a new hockey field, and we're suggesting add an extra 5,000. It's less than 1% of the construction cost to have the validation and the confidence that the thing has been done properly. So it's giving, we think it's a relatively small price to pay for the benefit of that quality assurance process. $1, exactly. Perfect. Perfect, yeah. Why don't I think of that? He's clearly a salesman. Claims he's an engineer, but he's clearly got a sales background. $1 a square metre, absolutely. That's all it is. It is a small amount of money in the big process. I won't read all of those. I'll leave them up on the screen for a couple of seconds. These are basically a selection. We've got a nice glossy. There's a couple of copies over there for those of you who want to take them away. It's also all on our website, which I'll show you in a minute. We asked people who'd gone through this process around the world, so in the UK, in Canada, in Victoria, Chile, and Johannesburg, South Africa. We asked clubs, we asked architects, how had they found the process? What were the benefits? What did they see as the advantages? And everybody we talked to came back with really positive statements of it gave them the confidence that they were talking and working with the right people. They were doing it professionally. They felt confident that they were not going to be misled and end up with a less than satisfactory facility. So a lot of very positive testimony from people who've gone through the process. Just to re-emphasise, and one of the problems we've had in the past, I think, is there's been a perception of a lot of what the FIH does only applies to the top level of the game. It's only for elite hockey. We really want to get the message across that this is applicable for all levels of hockey, development, club and community, hockey fives, when that takes off in Australia. It's not going to be an if, when, let's be positive. And obviously it does equally apply to the elite level of the game. So it's a quality programme for all levels of hockey facility construction. We've got a specific section on the website, a lot of additional information, guidance documents, they're being updated all the time. FIH.ch is the main website, and then /hockeyturf. Please have a look at it. You can download all the documentation, all the information. It's all there electronically. As an example of the website. So on the website, you can find out who all the certified companies are. You can find out which of their products are certified. They're all listed, and which fields around the world are certified. And then the facilities guidance documents that we have, the specifications, the guidance documents for sports lighting, hockey fives, hockey fields, etc., etc. It's all there for your use. So hopefully that's given you a brief overview of what we're doing and why we're trying to do it.